Hello there, Internet, and welcome back to another episode of How to Website with me, your host, Oriel Klasowski. In the last episode, we've just populated this folder with some HTML and CSS. And you don't have to watch the last episode, it's not gonna be too important for this one. But if you yourself want to be able to create a beautiful website such as this one, then do go ahead and watch our last episode. But today we're just gonna do some code injection. So what do we mean by code injection? Let's define that. So we're gonna create a file here. We'll call it the backlog. And we'll start with some user stories, which are going to be just clearly defining what it is that we want our application to perform. Yeah, let's write some user stories. As a user, I want to be able to view the site's content. Yes, makes perfect sense, but to make sure that we don't use a shortcut here, we will say that and only receive the content. So this is going to make sure that we don't just give him one page with a whole bunch of content and then just hide the irrelevant content. This is not going to be a good solution for us. And just to make it a good user story, so as not to waste my internet. Since we are making a single page application, it could be tempting to just have everything under one URL. But as a social user, I want to be able to share content that I like so that I can advertise, because this is why they share it, because they want our website to be popular. And the final thing we'll have to do is, since we will need a server for this, so as a site owner, I want to protect some of my files. And we'll just give one example for why that would be useful, so that I can store passwords, maybe, on my server. And this is just going to be the functionality, the user stories that we are going to fulfill today. And now we'll have to define some tasks for us to do in order to achieve them. In order to allow our users to view the site's content, we're going to first of all create an injection function, and that's going to insert text into our HTML. Right, and after that, create a server that will provide relevant content. And finally, we will create a function that will request the content for the user and inject it. Now, this is going underneath the first task and the second task, because it is going to use both of them. So we'll have that after both of them. So in order to share content that the user like, we're gonna have to load the correct content based on the URL, implement browsers, backwards and forwards. And I put it here because it's going to be very similar functions, so we can have them one by one. Now, to take care of our site's owner, what we will do is first we will create a public directory, and we will make sure users can only access that. And now we have our backlog, so we'll save that. And see, what should we start with? This seems simple enough. Create a public directory. I can do that. Make a directory, call it public. MV is for move, apostrophe is for everything. Oh, I can't move public to itself, that's okay. Maybe the backlog should be back here. First success on the way. So let's go ahead, go to the meat of our tutorial and create an injection function. Oh yeah, we'll move it here, but we will not untab it, so we know we're working on it right now. Let's go over to our public directory, create a JavaScript file called inject. Now we are in JavaScript, and JavaScript is much different than HTML and CSS. It's a bit more fluid and dynamic, if that makes sense. HTML and CSS are really kind of set in stone in a way, and JavaScript is much more like water. So in JavaScript we have functions, and this one is going to be inject. It will receive some text and it will inject it, right? So what do we mean by text, right? This may be confusing, so let's get some text here. First of all, let's go to index. This is our text in the website. If this is confusing to you, then again, feel free to go ahead and watch our previous tutorial, but if not, you can see that this is just a bunch of paragraphs with some lorem ipsum in them, which is gonna get rid of all the hard-coded content. And instead of that, we're gonna just copy. Last episode I showed you how to get some lorem ipsum on the web, and today we're just gonna have these files. Let's look at page 0. You see, this is a whole bunch of lorem ipsum, and believe me, the rest of them are the same. So this is how our data looks. Let's write it down here. Paragraphs separated by new lines. Create an array of paragraphs, and it's going to be equal text split at the new lines. We don't want empty lines, so we're going to filter lines, and we're gonna make sure that line is not empty. Now we should have paragraphs as an array of paragraphs, as its name suggests. So now JavaScript arrays come with a function called forEach, and it just runs over all of the components of the array. So for each paragraph. So in JavaScript, we can define a function like a function, and then function name, and then params. But we could also define anonymous functions that have no name. Have it like so. We can just, this is an anonymous function, but if it's an anonymous function, we could also just write it like so. That also would work. If we don't have any params, we could even go one step further, and if we only have one statement inside of the function, we could just a statement. Yeah, so that's what we've done here. We're declaring some anonymous functions. So this one is going to activate on every paragraph, and for each paragraph we want to create an HTML element. So let P is how we'll call it, and we will invoke the document, which is our HTML document that this JavaScript code is going to run on. So it's very useful, and we're going to create an element of type P, because P is a paragraph. Now P is going to have an inner HTML, so it's going to look like that, right? So our inner HTML is just going to be our paragraph. and that should inject that for us. Oh no, it's not. We've just created the element. Now we gotta place it inside of the document. So for that, we're just going to get document body, and we're just gonna append it to the body. And let's check it out now. Right now, we do have our inject.js file, but we need to link it from our HTML. So here we're gonna add to our HTML a tag of script. Now we used to have to specify that this script is JavaScript, but obviously if we're in HTML and we have a script, it's probably JavaScript, so we don't need to specify what it is. We'll just have to specify where it is, and it's going to be in this directory, inject.js. We should be ready. Now we're back in our website. I'm going to use Ctrl-Shift-I to open up my console, and as you can see, I do have my inject here. Line is not defined. What is line? What is line? Go back. Oh shit. Oh, lines, and then, okay, let's see what's happening here. We just have a single line here, it's not a plural. Got over it. Brilliant, and it should also work with new lines. Now for new lines, I'm gonna use the backtick. Notice, not a single tick, not a double tick. The backtick is the most powerful of all ticks, and you should remember that. Hey there, want to have some new lines. We'll give it 4 question marks because we mean business. Yeah, here we have it. But what happens here? We have all of our old code injections still here. See, if I'm going to code inject again and again and just like hammer this button, we are going to have a whole bunch of paragraphs here, and this is no good. So let's go back to our backlog for a second. We have done that, but alas, we wanted to remove all other content. So we don't want to just keep adding content, and for that, when we create our element, we're going to just mark it. Give it a class name. We'll call it local because it is a local file. And before we inject our paragraphs, we're going to get an array from, and we have to use this function because once we get elements by class from our document, it's going to be a DOM set or whatever. I mean, it's not going to be a JavaScript array, so we'll have to use a function for that. Document get elements by class name, and our class name is going to be local. And you know, arrays, we could for each them, and we'll say for each paragraph, because so maybe for each local, right? Ask it to kindly remove itself. Close that. Let's check it out. If we add some, whatever, and we run that, you see this is the only content that we get. Only what we put in. If we put in nothing, we inject nothing, then we have nothing. We don't have any leftovers from our last inject. And so, we can finally untab this task. Fantastic. So what should we do next? We could create a server, and at the same time we can make sure that our users can only access that public directory. It looks like 2 different tasks, but these tasks are actually interconnected, because if we want to make sure that users can only access the public directory, then we need to use a good server. The internet is filled with devious individuals, and I am now no security expert, so we are going to use a library for our server. Now, since we are already using JavaScript, I am going to use JavaScript for my server. So that's going to be nodejs. And if we're using nodejs, we should also use npm, which is Node.js's package manager. And my personal favorite Node.js server is Express. So we will use Express. It's fairly popular, should probably be maintained for quite some time now, and should be alright, so let's use it. So if you haven't already, install npm on your computer, and then go ahead and npm install node.js. If we're going to use npm in this directory, we'll need to init code injection. Right, entry point is not injecting, it's gonna be server. Test command, we don't need that. Git repository, well, you definitely need a Git repository, especially if you're like me. Come home after a night out in the town, little bit of tipsy, you sit down on your computer, you start coding some stuff. The next day everything is broken, right? So just use Git. But not this time. No keywords, author. It's gonna be paper rust. Can I use capitals? I can't remember. And open source is fantastic. So yes, thank you npm. And now we can save a dependency for our project. Yeah, we want to install it. Just give it a second to do its magic. Maybe stretch up a little bit. Maybe go ahead and give this video a like you know you ought to. So yeah, let's go to the backlog. We've done some stuff. We made sure that the user can only access the public directory, not really. Did we create a server? No, we just declared a dependency. Oh, that was premature. We said it's gonna be server.js. Now we are in the server, and in Node.js land, we can require stuff. And we'll just require Express, right? Our app is going to be an invocation of Express. We would also need path, which is a native Node.js library. So from our server, what we need is to serve, first of all of the files within our public library. So we're gonna use express static. We're gonna use the underscore dir name, which is going to be the directory in which this particular Node.js application is found. So wherever we are found on the server, underscore dir name is going to refer us to that particular directory. We're gonna give them the public library. And lastly, we're gonna listen. And I think it's better practice to define our port here. And for now, it's just gonna be port 5000. Once we host this website, then our port is probably not gonna be 5000. 5000 is a very popular port. They're probably not gonna give it to us. So we're gonna listen at port. Possibly you wouldn't want to deal with your errors and whatnot, but we're just gonna console log, use the backtick. We can do both new lines and variables. How beautiful, unbelievable. I will use no daemon, because no daemon, much like reload, is going to just refresh my server whenever I change it, and we will need to change our server just a little bit later on. Now, do we have Firefox open? No. And here we have in our localhost 5000, we got our website served. Beautiful, right? And now in the future we will have a www.awesomewebsite.whatever, probably IO since high tech. Yeah, so that's fantastic. We have created a server and we made sure that users can only access the public directory. So, brilliant. That's fantastic. So let's create a function that will request the content and inject it. We'll go over to inject. Let's call it page. We will use our fetch functionality that is provided by most modern browsers. I mean, all modern browsers. I don't know what, and it should work on everything with very future proof, I believe. So fetch is going to send a GET request to our server. Remember, backtick is the most powerful one. The lorem ipsum files are just called page number. You can put a dot, it's you know, whatever. Page, and then we'll have the number. We're going to use the then protocol, and this is just going to place a function that will be called whenever the fetch request has been performed, and also no other JavaScript is running. So at that point, we will get a response. HTTP stuff. But what we want is a text. And what do we do with text? We inject it. Just keep it like that for now. Seems like we closed all of our things that need closing. Refresh. Let's call page 0. We made a GET request. And here we have all of our lorem ipsum. And if we inspect it, indeed we have p elements, and they have a class local, remember, because we like to delete them sometimes. So that's fun. Let's call another. Do another page, right? Awesome. Let's just test what happens when we call page 8, which does not exist. We could have a format found, but I think this is pretty much self-explanatory. This is kind of silly. We didn't really took care of this user story, even though we've finished all of the tasks within it. A user can still not get any of the content. Connect buttons to that function. Go over to index.html. It's been a while. And on-click. I mean, I know I'm not using the backtick, but it's okay. VM out for a second here. So that's done with. Let's check it out. So our buttons lead to pages, and we can untag these. Beautiful. Don't you just love it? And load the correct content based on the URL. Is this how based actually called? And implement the browser's backwards and forwards buttons. So if I put in here some stuff, see, we just cannot get this because this is just some text. We need our server to serve index on every nonsense request. Take care of that, we'll have to go back to our server. Let's just say that if we get a request straight to the root of our website request and a response, and we just need the response to redirect to the log, because this is the name of our main page, because it's the most leftist of all buttons. And let's see. Let's see if it works. Oh, we have an error. If you don't close things, kids, you're gonna get some errors. So we've made a request to the root of our website, and we got redirected to the lore, but we did not get the index file. So let's fix that. So invocations of the app methods will be placed in order of importance. So first of all, if we get a request to the root, then we redirect. And otherwise, if it's not a request to the root, then we're going to use express static to check if the request is to one of the files found in the public directory, and if so, we serve it. But if we just get some nonsense, the request and a response, and we'll close the whole thing this time. And for our response, we're gonna send a file path join _ dir name. You remember what that is? Public index.html. Now this is a bit of a conundrum, because what's gonna happen here? We're gonna get a request to the law. Let's just see that it happens. So we got a request, we're gonna send a request to the root of the website, and then what we're gonna get? What we're gonna get is this empty page, and the next step is from this empty page we're gonna look at the address, we see that it's the law, and then we're gonna request the content for this page. So we're making 2 trips to the server, which is maybe a bit inefficient, but if we were to handle it over here at the server and just, whitelist all of our different pages and then send the correct files together in just one request, that would be maybe slightly more efficient, but it would be a less general of a solution. It would be quite difficult to implement different components this way. So we're just gonna take the inefficiency. So for every bit of gibberish, we're just gonna get our main page. Brilliant. So for most gibberishes, it's gonna be okay, we're just gonna get nothing. But if it happens to say the law or sit or met or est, then we would want to invoke page and grab whatever relevant information we need and what so. We'll just vim out and grab all of these the law, sit, met, est names, and we'll just put them inside of an array in our inject.js. Make an array. Let's call this array page names. Uncapitalize all of these ones. So yeah, we got an array here of page names, and we will need to go to the window now, which is the browser. Onload is a function that the browser is going to invoke once the page gets loaded. The name found in the URL is going to be window path name, and the window path name, see, it's going to give us this entire string, and it's going to include the little backslash thing, which we do not want, so we're gonna take a substring. So that's going to be our name, and we'll page number, and for that we'll use the array page names index of name, and this is going to give us the correct index of our URL if one exists, and then we will call page on page number. And we did in fact close everything. If we go over to the law, do we have an error? Yeah, window path name is undefined. Let's Google it. Oh, it's location path name. Location path name. Oh, see, we got the law. We did get the law here. Let's look for a met for just a second. And we got a met, which we know is a met because it's a different law in Ipsum. And if it's not the law, must be a met, right? Now, one of the main issues is that as we go about pressing buttons, this URL does not change. So whenever we call page, we want to change the URL accordingly. But for that, we will need 2 different modes, because in one mode, as we go about pressing buttons, we would want to save that journey we took in our history so that we can use the back button. But in this instance, when we load the page, we don't want to save it to the history because the browser have already done that. We will just get 2 times this page in history. It's annoying. So in page we will have another parameter, and it's going to determine whether or not we're going to save stuff to the history. Over here we'll have history. We'll say that the default value of history is true. And now we can have some logic stuff. So if we do want to save stuff to the history, then we're gonna go back to the window, because we are dealing with the browser, push state. Now here our first parameter could be any object. This is the state. So we'll just have the state be the number of the page. Makes a lot of sense. And then we have a mysterious parameter that have no meaning. And then we will have the name, which is the URL that we want. So this is going to be page names number. So if we don't want to save history, we will have a fairly similar function here, but instead of push state, we're gonna replace state. Check it out, see what happens. Did we not deal with this already? We put it into Google. We need to capitalize our state. I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say that this probably needs to be capitalized too. It's still not a function. Yank that and paste it. Oh my god, it is not a function. Oh right, yeah. Window history. Window history, will that be the one? Yeah, we seem to have got the page. Oh nice. If I press on the law, nothing happens because I'm already in the law. But if I press on sit, oh my god. See, it changes the URL. Ain't that or something? Nice, but we still don't have the back button. I mean, the window object is taking care of changing the URL according to the back button. But the window is already loaded, so we're gonna need window on pop state. We will get an event. So we're just gonna go ahead, call page on this event state. And since we are going back here, it's very important that we do not save it to history, because this is going to be just really annoying if we forget to do that. Go back, and it goes back. Just like does it go forward? Yes, it goes forward as well, even though it's not actually popping state, but well, the metaphor can only go so far, right? Server to server on every nonsense. That doesn't even make any sense. It's done. It's done. And we appear to be finished. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Please do leave me a like. Please subscribe if you like the content. Until next time, have a lovely time in isolation.